as I want to push in the state that I'm in. So, but that was good, definitely a step forward. The bike's a lot more turny and I'm not grounding out anywhere, so happy days. Right, hi guys, let's give you a little update of where we're at with the R9. So I went away to Slovakia Ring to do an endurance race with a good friend of mine, Bob Collins, and as a result of pushing quite hard in a third qualifying session that I really didn't need to do when we were already P1 and P2, I had an accident and it basically beat me up a little bit. So I've had a broken finger and I've then got a damaged knee and some ribs and a damaged thumb. So I haven't really been in the best shape really as a result of it, but it was a pretty fast crash, so I've got away quite lightly overall after what happened. So the development process has been slowed down a little bit. So last week I had to drain my knee before I went and took this bike out again, but I managed to get it out and I managed to ride, albeit at maybe, I don't know, 95% on what I'm capable of doing, but it was still enough to actually test out what we needed to do, which was the next level. So if you remember the last time we took this bike out, I crashed it again. It's the second time that I've crashed it, which was a front end low side, and both times the left hand side engine casing has touched the ground. So what we did was when we came back, we redesigned the linkage in the rear and we changed it to a more progressive design. And as well as that, it lifted the back of the bike. So we lifted the back of the bike by 15 millimeters and we lifted the front of the bike by 15 millimeters. So the whole bike is now sitting higher. And this is what I tested the other day at Snetterton. Now, instantly we found that there was a huge improvement from this setup. So we weren't touching down any longer. I was able to run the foot pegs in a lower position, which meant that I was less cramped on the bike and I was more comfortable without the foot pegs touching. As well as that, under braking, the shock before needed to have a lot of preload on, so I had very little static sag to have the correct amount of laden sag. And now with the progressive linkage, I have a lot less preload on the shock, which means that you have a lot more static sag and less laden sag. So overall, the balance was correct using the standard springs, and bear in mind that was on the standard suspension. So when I was braking, there was more extension. So the rear stayed in contact with the ground more and helped me with braking. So it was definitely more stable under braking. I could brake later and harder. Small amounts, but it was still a definite advantage. The bike would turn better, and that was something which was very noticeable. It was able to finish the corner much better than it was before. So I didn't have to be quite as precise and accurate because the bike would still manage to do the turn for me. So that was a big help. Tyre wear was reduced. The way that the rear tyre was wearing has reduced quite considerably, and that was obviously a nice side effect. And edge grip was increased. So basically there wasn't a downside. Every single thing that went with this more progressive linkage which we did is an improvement, so that was great. So we came back from there quite positive. There's a few other areas which I highlighted while I was there, one of them being the brakes. Even with the ABS removed, we're finding that there is sort of like a time delay almost from when you hit the brakes to when I'm getting full braking power. And I'm not so convinced about these Stylemma calipers, I'll be honest with you. We've got decent pads in there. It's the same material which all of our seating pads are made of, so I know that the material is good. I've used standard disc before. I don't have too much of a problem with that. I haven't had much experience with the standard Brembo master cylinder, and I haven't had much experience with the Stylemma calipers, but overall there's something which is not right in the mix there. So what we've done now is we've changed the master cylinder for a PFM. This is obviously a known quantity for me, so therefore the only thing which is left in this system which is an unknown quantity is the Stylemmas. So we're going to see what it's like with this. This will be the next test which we're doing, which is going to be tomorrow. In addition to that, other changes which we've made, we have now changed the suspension. So another thing which I noticed about the suspension, okay, it still goes stiff in the bottom part of the stroke, and we now know that that is due to the hydraulic bump stop. So it's very difficult to use all of the stroke with a person of my weight, but the spring rate is pretty good. We've dropped the air gap fractionally, which helped it sit slightly lower in the stroke when we were coming off the corner and made things work better. So overall, as a balance, we've got a very, very good setup using the stock suspension, and with the different linkage and the bike lifted up in the air, everything was considerably better. But to make things even better again, what I feel we needed to do is either remove that hydraulic bump stop and fit maybe a rubber one, which is quite an expensive thing to do on a standard set of forks, or change the fork internals. So what we've done is we have gone to K-Tech and we have purchased a set of TRDS fork internals and a TRDS shock. So my original plan was to make a cheaper setup with something like an IDS fork kit and maybe a Razor R shock, but neither of those are going to be available within the timescale which we've got. So we've just purchased what is available, and we've set it up with these. And these are like their top spec. It's the most fantastic suspension I've ever used. I've had it on the R1 now for a year. Once I got the setup correct, it's really is sublime. It has very low tyre wear, excellent grip. The bike does everything which you want it to with that setup. So we've put the same settings into these forks as we developed on the R1, and I'm hopeful that is going to put us in the ballpark straight away. And then we've set the bike up statically, and basically we are ready to go and test the suspension. So that's what we're going to do tomorrow. In addition to fitting the forks, we also fitted a set of the seat and tuning clip-ons, which many of you use and will probably be familiar with. They are pretty much a standard position, but much longer. So we have more leverage, and it gives you more space on the bar because they're a bit longer. You can fit more things on there. You know, you can fit kill switches and other bits and pieces on there. Standard bars are a bit cramped. So they're all fitted and they're all set up. That's all good. So we're ready to go and test it. Just a note for anybody: if you want to change the clip-ons on these bikes for ones which are longer, you're going to run into some problems. So the first thing which we had to do is we had to make a 50mm longer clutch cable, which we have in stock. If anyone needs them, we can supply those for you. They're not massively expensive, but they stop it from being like a bowstring trying to tension around the front of your ignition barrel here, and you don't want it running tight. Obviously, you don't want it pulling tight up as you try and turn the bike. The second thing, which is a big problem, is that the wiring loom is too tight. So the wiring loom plugs directly into the standard switchgear. So there is no extra wiring which you can sort of reposition or reroute and try and find a bit of extra length with it. So we had to actually cut into the loom, strip it back, extend some wires, and then put it all back together. So it's not as simple as just here's your clip-ons, bolt them on and away you go. Anyone who tries to fit some longer clip-ons is going to run into this problem. So we're coming up with some other solutions with different switch gear which will have different tails on, so that we can potentially increase the length of those, giving a little bit more variability so that people can set things up much more easily. And also potentially in the future, if you have an accident and you damage your connector on the loom, you might need to have to buy an entire wiring loom for the bike, which is a bit of a worry. So we're trying to find a solution for that, which would be a much cheaper and easier solution for people, because I'd imagine some of these bikes are going to end up in breakers yards or on Copart, and people are going to buy a written off bike and then want to put it into a track bike, and they might get surprised when they realise it's £1,450 plus VAT for a wiring loom. So that could be a little bit of a shock for people. So we're trying to find a solution for that as well. But one thing at a time. Tomorrow we're going to test this out with the same progressive linkage which we tested before, but with obviously the TRDS suspension. So this fork here has got 130mm of travel, where you have 125mm as standard, but we were only able to use 117mm. That's the most that we've managed to achieve out of the standard fork. So I'm pretty confident that we're going to be able to get this one further through the stroke. And as it sits taller by 5mm, we've dropped the forks through by 5mm. So the overall geometric balance of the bike is exactly the same statically right now, but when we're braking and going into a corner, what we should find is the bike will be more on its nose, and I'm hopeful that this is going to mean the bike is going to turn even better tomorrow. So we'll find that out tomorrow anyway, and I'll give you some feedback on it. In addition to that, we've also got a more linear linkage which we're going to try as well. So no stone unturned, we're trying all sorts of different options here to see what's going to be the best solution for these bikes to make the suspension work well. So I'll have to report back again after I've tested it and give you some more feedback. So the only other changes which we've made to the bike is we've extended the wheelbase now. So we had to make some modifications so that we could get the full length out of the swing arm, which we have done here. We've also changed the chain and sprockets for a 520 setup. We're running the same gearing as we were before. We might change that a little bit tomorrow during the course of the day, but ultimately we want to try it with a longer wheelbase as well and see what happens. So yeah, there's a little update for you on where we're at. So I'm excited to go and ride tomorrow. I'm not completely fit, but I'm sure I'll be at about 95%. So watch this space for a little bit more feedback later on.